Hello, ladies. Welcome back to another episode of Menopause Reimagined. Today, we are going to be speaking about men's perspective of menopause. And it came about because several months ago, I spoke at a live event. And afterwards, a man came over to me and started opening up about his relationship with his wife, who was in perimenopause. And he was having a very difficult time. And we talked for a very long time. We had a very long, in-depth conversation. And that inspired me to want to launch a survey specifically for men, because right now we have 15 surveys on our website. 14 of them are for women in perimenopause and menopause. But this one, which is called our men's perspective of menopause, is for the men in these women's lives, in our lives. And we recently found out that this particular survey will be published, the abstract will be published in the journal Menopause in December, which is really exciting. So around the same time, I came across a creator who is male, and he was talking about women in perimenopause and menopause. And he was talking specifically to husbands and their male partners. And we said that we would do a collaboration and that he would come on my podcast. And today is the episode where he came on. So I'm so excited for you to meet him. But before I bring him in, I want to do a quick intro to who I am. My name is Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for more than 20 years. I'm a published menopause researcher, and I'm the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that empowers you to take control of your health and symptoms with nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research. Today, I'm speaking with Jesse. He's a husband, father, and advocate for building awareness around menopause for other husbands and men in general. He started with a single TikTok post asking women if they wanted their husbands to support them in menopause, and the overwhelmingly positive response started him on a journey that has brought him passion and purpose. I'm excited for you to get to know him. Now, here's Jesse. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Jesse.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
And I'm excited to have you. I'm happy because I saw you, or I found you on TikTok, and we've been communicating, we've been chatting for a while, and I'm happy that we were finally able to make this happen. So I would love you to tell your story about how you literally became a spokesman, I'll say spokesman,
Yeah.
for women in perimenopause and menopause.
Thank you. It's something that I never expected, as it, often happens. I was actually just coming home from work, listening to a podcast that I love to listen to, and Dr. Mary Claire Haver was the guest on that podcast. I had actually never heard of her. This is about 6 months ago. I'd never heard of her, and of course, I had heard of menopause, but I wouldn't be able to explain the first thing about it to you. And so I just decided to just let the podcast roll and listen to what she had to say. And in the first 5 minutes, I really just had something hit me. I was listening to what she was talking about, and I was reflecting on my wife and my 14-year-old daughter as she was talking about what women are going through, how hard this is, how little support there is, how doctors, by her own admission, aren't trained to support women on this, all of the things, right? The pain, the mental, the physical challenges. And I just, I had a TikTok channel at the time that was about parenting, which is why my TikTok channel is actually called The Parent Express. It was about expressing what you're going through in parenting. And I'd had it for about a month, and I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to ask a question on this channel and just ask, do women want their husbands to talk to them about menopause? And I kind of said it that sheepishly. And I thought, for sure, this is the end of me on social media. I'm going to get completely, and the exact opposite happened. Women were pouring into the comments saying, yes, please help us. We're isolated. We're not getting the support that we need. The education isn't out there. We do want our husbands to partner with us and support us. Please talk to husbands about this. And from there it began. I just started looking into it more. I started reading books. I started listening to more podcasts, doing my own research and reading the whole thing. And it became a passion project. I just became really fulfilled by the idea of, especially when I started to understand how this can break up relationships, I started to get really fulfilled by the idea of, if I can help husbands understand this just a little bit, if there's more husbands out there like me that would want to step up and support their wives, if they only understood more about this, and I believe that there are, then I want to talk to those guys. And if I can change some of the other guys that maybe are a lot harder to change, I'm up for that too. So, from there, the rest is kind of history at this point.
I love that because we need men, we need our partners to be talking about it because yes, our so many relationships are affected as we go into this stage of life. I mean, on both ends, right? Like women are changing, the men, a lot of them don't understand what's happening to the
Yep.
women. I've had men tell me that they're like, my wife isn't who she was. Like she's not herself anymore. She isn't the person I married, right? So there's so much going on that having the right vocabulary
Mm.
is really important in order to be able to speak about what's happening in her life and in some cases the men's life too. Like I interviewed Bryce Wild, we talked all about andropause, we talked male menopause, right? So it's happening, so many changes are happening for both partners that it's important to kind of bring us together and have that conversation and have those conversations. So tell me a little bit about your wife because obviously it's coming from a place of personal experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that I started to connect, actually, and I think a lot of men who have told me in the comments are connecting this as well, is once they hear about this, they have that aha, like, oh, that's what that is, right? You know,
Mm-hmm,
it's
yeah.
not, it's actually less about advance notice as much as I'd love for, women and men and husbands especially to hear this in advance of maybe some of the things that come down the road. Most husbands are saying like, oh, that's why, right? And that's great because that awareness, I think, is the answer. I don't try to, I certainly don't try to educate women on menopause. I'm clearly talking to men and husbands. I'm not trying to make that mistake, but I
Smart
do
move.
think, yeah, and but I do think that to your point, having the right vocabulary is important. And I talk to men to say, listen, you don't have to be an expert, but understand a few things, right? Understand that this is out of her control. Understand that while there are things that can be done, the fact that this is happening is a part of it's a phase of womanhood. It's natural, but it doesn't feel that way. And these are some of the things that she's going to go through. And so if you're aware of that, think about how much easier the conversation can be, right? Between, him and his wife. If he doesn't know any of this, he's not going to be able to have a conversation, right? And then she's going to feel like, okay, now I have to explain all this to you. So now that's one more thing I have to do on top of all of this that I'm going through. But if he can show up just with a baseline understanding, not explain anything to her, but at least show up, saying like, okay, I can talk to you about this. Then they can come to, okay, I get it. You need me to turn down the thermostat. I understand why. You want a fan in the bedroom? Got it. Just step up and I realize that I haven't been carrying the mental load that you're dealing with. I didn't even know what mental load was, but now I do, and now I you know what I mean? And so let me just do a better job stepping up and maybe doing the things that I should have been doing this whole time, but I haven't been. But now I understand how hard what you're going through is, and I want to support you. And that's all that I'm trying to create in this conversation with men.
And is your wife in perimenopause?
Yes. And so she's in her mid 40s. And I'll give you a perfect example. I would often I will roll over in bed and I'll be fully, covered up and covers are totally off on her. Right. And for the longest time, I'd just be like, all right, what's going on over there? Like what? And we're right next to each other, but we're in completely different climates. It feels like, and then of
Yeah.
course I learn about hot flashes and I learn about night sweats and then when those things happen, it makes so much more sense, right? And that's kind of an innocent scenario, but a more impactful scenario might be something like when she gets emotional over something that feels like I don't understand why,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't whatever. I'll give you an example. We changed healthcare and thereby we lost because she became out of network. We lost the doctor that had been with our kids for their whole lives. We lost the pediatrician. And when I told my wife this, she immediately broke down. And she just literally sat at the table and cried. And I remember looking at her not knowing what to do. I was just like, it just didn't, to me, it just seemed a little bit more matter of fact. Like, this is how it works. We had a doctor, now we don't. It's insurance, it's companies, it is. But because this happened, actually, after I had started talking about menopause and started talking to men about menopause, I at least had the moment to think to myself, this could make actually more sense than it feels like it makes, right? This
Hmm.
this emotion, the weight of everything else she's dealing with, and now to hit her with this, it's not actually just about this. it could be in part about her emotions and about how those are fluctuating with the changes in her hormones. But on top of that, it just might be this is the one thing on top of everything else that she feels like she's carrying in going through these menopause symptoms that just made her have to sit down and just let some emotion out. And if I can have understanding about that as a husband, rather than doing the like, hey, what's going on? Like, listen, this isn't such a big deal. Relax. Like that can be the kind of response that a man can give a woman in that scenario if he doesn't take a minute to just understand, like, there may be more to this. And bringing that awareness into the minds of men is something that I'm really trying to do. I'm trying to talk a little bit more recently about the context around everything with menopause. It's not just understanding what a hot flash is or understanding why a mood swing happens, but it's also understanding everything else that's going on in her life as a woman that has been going on, that is going on. And if you can bring all that into the picture, you can again come back to the main point, which is how do you have an open conversation with this? How do you go through this time in her life together in a way that doesn't cause you to be, one of the staggering statistics of divorces that are happening during these years?
So was she aware that she was in this stage of life before? Like, so how did, like, what came first? The fact that she knew she was in perimenopause and told you about it? Or did you learn about it and come back to her and say, hey, I think you might be in perimenopause?
Well, I definitely learned about it after the fact. So she was aware,
Okay.
but we hadn't talked about it. She had never brought it up. Um, I didn't walk up to her and say, I think this is where you're at. Actually, what ended up happening was kind of a funny story. I was doing my research and I was learning about this, and I walked into the kitchen one day and I said, hey, honey, did you know that doctors aren't trained to support women in menopause? And she gave me this look like, welcome to the show. Like I've I've been here for a while. The seat next to me is open. You're welcome
Yeah,
to you're welcome to join.
that's hilarious.
But it was like I had been out in the lobby a little bit reading about this, and she had been in the show really experiencing it. And I found out actually quite a bit after the fact that a number of the things that she was going through emotionally, physically, with things like hot flashes, night sweats, and that sort of thing, those things had been going on for a while. But she wasn't talking to me about them. And,
Mhm.
that was something that not right away, but that we did get to the point of, hey, if there's things that are going on, let's talk about it, right? And I think that that's when I started exploring a little bit around the shame and the grief that comes with this, which was, next level to the initial understanding that I started to gather about, okay, what are these symptoms? Why do they happen? What's going on with these hormones? That was sort of the baseline introductory experience for me. Like, let me get my head around that. Then I started getting into understanding, oh, there's more to this. This isn't just about the physical symptoms. This is also about this idea of women feel like they've lost themselves. They feel like they don't know themselves anymore. They feel like they're carrying a certain amount of grief because they feel like this girl that they knew and loved is gone. And there is a shame that comes with this idea of this signifies some level of I'm getting older. This signifies some level of maybe I'm losing beauty. I'm not as attractive. I'm not able to meet society's ridiculous expectations of women. I mean, all of those types of things play into this.
Mhm.
I didn't understand, even when I started learning about this, I definitely didn't pick up on that until I started having conversations with my wife. And she was starting to help me understand the bigger picture. And that's really been that, plus all the comments in my channel, which is actually a really awesome database of information about menopause that I've been able to tap into.
Yeah.
I think there's over 120,000 comments on my TikTok channel, and it's literally women just sharing their pain, sharing their hopes, sharing what they're going through, sharing their frustrations with their husbands, sharing, their advocacy that they're asking for. That has been as much as I've researched and read and done all those things, the comments has been one of the greatest sources of information about this that I can never tap into.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. That's why I love my TikTok page, the comments and the women sharing, and it is a huge source of learning. And the fact that women are vulnerable and wanting to share
Mhm.
to me is so incredible about the women who are going through it. How has it changed? Like, obviously, I'm thinking it's changed your relationship for the better, but how has it changed can you give me examples of how it's changed your relationship with your wife?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I've noticed is now everything's on the table. So what once was this sense of, oh yeah, if somebody had asked me, I would have been like, oh yeah, we talk openly, right? Then I find out that this thing affecting a third of her life is not on the table. Okay, so maybe there's some room to grow in this area, right? So I
Yeah,
think that that has definitely helped. Um, I think that she's proud of me. I honestly
yeah,
think
of course.
I think that she thinks that this is pretty cool, that I'm really passionate about this and that I'm really trying to make a difference. And I'm trying to learn about this and not only understand what she's going through, but also advocate for a better future for my daughter, for our daughter, right? For daughters. This next generation of women shouldn't have to go through this, like what all of Gen X is doing right now. We weren't prepared for this. Nobody told us about this. And great, the doctors who went through medical school, 20 years ago got no training on this. Right? That doesn't have to be the case for my
Yeah.
daughter. So um, we talk more openly. That's got to be the most important, most impactful thing that's changed in our relationship. And it's helped me just learn a little bit more about not just menopause, but about her journey as a woman and about her perspective on things as a woman. I can give you an example. When I walked into the kitchen and I was like, "Hey, did you know doctors are not trained?" Her response not only was, welcome to the show, but her response also was, "Hey, before you go, think about who made the decisions as to what doctors should study, what the medical field should have been studying in all of these years. Who made the decisions to not study women, right?" And it just left me with this sort of profound, oh wow, okay, that's an obvious thing to so many women, but it's not obvious to men that men were making the decision that women were too expensive. Men were making the decision that women were too difficult to study. Men were making the decision to cut off studies on women of a reproductive age in the 70s. If you really care, in my opinion, about this, it becomes actually bigger than menopause. It becomes a moment where you start to really understand women on
Hmm.
on a completely different level, and it changes everything. It changes your outlook on humanity. And I know this sounds super grandiose, but I didn't start that way. I started with what is a hot flash, and but after really immersing myself in this for 6 7 months, I've gotten to the point where now these are the thoughts that I'm having, and
Yeah.
I find it really powerful, and I'm grateful for it.
And we're grateful for it that you're even having these thoughts as well and speaking out. I mean, the truth is we're so women's health is so under researched, and now we see there's a lot more, obviously, a lot more money that's being allotted to it from different
Mhm.
organizations, which is really exciting. That's why I'm so passionate about my research. Like in terms of we do community research and speaking to the women directly, to the men. We have our men's perspective of menopause, which I'll be published on in December, which is super exciting. So for me, speaking directly to the people, gathering this information, gathering this research is so key because there's like we need more of it, right? Like, and
Yep.
hopefully it's just going to keep coming and keep having. So I like that you're having the conversation. I love that your wife's educating you about it and
Yep.
kind of opening up your eyes. Have you done anything around like male menopause or andropause at all?
So I've looked at it, but I definitely haven't looked at it quite as in depth as I have on menopause. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I want to stay the course a little bit of what I'm focusing on and what I think like the big mission is that I'm trying to accomplish. But in doing so, I've definitely looked into andropause and I've understood at just what I think would be a base level that call it roughly 10% of men or a low percentage of men will get low enough testosterone to where it's andropause, and they're having very similar actually effects to what women are dealing with in menopause, as far as whether that might be mental challenges, physical challenges. Some of those same difficulties will happen for men. Where I have found myself pausing on that, no pun intended, is because what I don't want to do in talking about andropause, and I'd love your opinion on this because I'm trying to figure this out myself, is I don't want to I don't want to send a message out there like, oh, well, men deal with it too. Um, and as much as they do, right, as much as andropause is a real thing, 100% of women go through menopause. The vast majority of which have some element of a difficult symptom that they deal with. You have the suicide rates, you have the divorce rates, you have the clinical depression rates. It's not the same. And what I worry about, and what men in comments will say is, well, great, women go through menopause. Well, we go through andropause. And I'm like,
Dismissing it or minimizing it.
yeah, and that's so I want to personally, I want to learn more about andropause. I want to understand it better, right? Like I don't know if half of what I just said was wrong. I'm trying to understand it as much as I can, but what I get concerned about is the men who really dismiss menopause and dismiss women because they think they have this crutch that they can fall on. And when I try to do, I've done a post or two talking about andropause just at a baseline, level. Um, what I try to make sure I'm doing is saying, okay, well, yes, this is real, but let's not use that as a reason to not focus over here on a much bigger global problem affecting over 1 billion women in the world today. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's with andropause, that's with my particular message in educating women about menopause. That's where I want to make sure I'm careful. If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I think you could do both. I definitely do. I think that it's valid, and as long as you keep repeating that message, that that's what your goal is, and then I think it's totally fine to be able to cover both topics. The one thing I will say, like whether it's andropause or male menopause or maybe it's something else, like I'll give you a great example. Like men's health, yes, it's studied a lot, but I do think it does play a role when it comes to relationships for women, for us in this phase of life. So my husband, who is totally chill, his personality, like that's kind of like I'm I'd say triple A personality type personality. And he's just very relaxed. And that's kind of what I found attractive about him. And a couple of years ago, his personality was changing. He was exhausted all the time. He was moody beyond belief. And that was causing friction in our relationship. So at the time, I'm like, I think you should go get your hormones checked because you might be in andropause. He went to get his hormones checked, but he also had his vitamin D levels checked. He ended
Hmm.
up being severely deficient in vitamin D.
Sure.
He started taking it, and within days, his mood changed. And then our relationship changed. So I do
Hmm.
think that there is responsibility on both sides to be able to be had, right? So I think it's totally okay to be speaking about what men can do and what their responsibility is, including maybe it's getting tested, including for their hormones or for whatever else it is. So I think as long as that message doesn't get lost, I think then that's I mean, again, it's my opinion. I think I want to hear what we can do for our partners as well,
Yep.
because a lot of the times our partners aren't really looking into their health, right? They'll ignore their health, they'll leave it, they won't go to the doctor. And that's where, as much as I always say, like, whether it's my kids, my husband, like, I don't want to be responsible for that. But I know for a lot of women listening, it is. A lot of women will be able to direct their husbands or say, maybe you should go do this, go do that. Although at some point, everybody should have their own responsibilities. But I think that it's okay to have, again, I know, like, I kind of feel like it's okay to have that conversation.
I mean, I agree. What's actually less black and white than andropause that I struggle with a little bit is men who say, this is hard for me too, meaning their wife's menopause. And so it's
Yeah.
not about andropause or their health necessarily, but or maybe you could say it's more about their mental health. But men will say often, and they'll say it in my comments, they'll say, okay, so got it. She's going through all of this. Well, what about me? this is hard for me too, right? I may not be going through anything that you can medically define, but the impact that this is having on her is impacting me also. And that's another message that I think is that needs to be out there or that needs to be not ignored. But I'm also trying to figure out how to get there, right? Because I don't also want to then now all of a sudden turn the narrative around from what
Yep,
it
I
is,
totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, and I can't share it yet, but in another couple of months, I'm going to be sharing our results of our men's perspective of menopause survey. I will share those results with you, also all of you listening. So if you are not already subscribed to this podcast, please subscribe because I'm going to be sharing the results of 3 more surveys that are being published very shortly. And the men's perspective of menopause, Jesse, I will go through those results with you and we will share them so that you could get the word out there. But what's super interesting about those results is that to your point is a lot of men, it does affect them. It does.
Yeah.
It affects both of us, both partners. And a lot of men don't know what to do or don't know how to act. So they're walking on eggshells or they don't want to come home because they know they're just going to get yelled at or whatever it is. So I think that for a lot of the men, at least the men that filled out our survey, over 430 men that have filled out our survey as of right now, is a lot of them want to learn. They
Yeah.
want to do better. They want to be able to help their wives. And that's the positive message that is coming out from our research. And I love hearing that because they're like, okay, I know that it's affecting her. I know that it's affecting me. What can I do about it? And
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can, but help me with some tools to be able to do something about it. And I think that's the key is so the willingness. I mean, I've seen, Marcella Hill, who is from Wake Her Up. She has done several posts on women in this phase of life. And I've seen the comments because I'm collaborating with her on one of them that she did not too long ago. And some men, to your point, have been like, those comments are just despicable, in my opinion. Like some of those comments from the men are like, leave her, that's why I'm with a younger woman, or just
Right.
really
Yeah.
rude and disrespectful. But then there are a lot of men who are like, listen, I love my wife. I've been married to her for X amount of years, and I want to make a difference so that we can work on our relationship. So I think those are the voices we want to hear. Those are the voices that we want to put up front and center to be able to say, okay, how can I help my partner who's going through this?
And I know that I've started to learn about these two groups of men myself, right? Like initially I had the thought of, okay, if I didn't, I would have considered myself a caring, loving husband, but I didn't know anything about this, and I
Yeah,
didn't know that my wife was even going through it. So
yeah,
initially, I'm like, okay, there has got to be so many men out there that are just like me, that are caring
100%.
and loving husbands, that if
Yeah,
they only knew more about this, they'd want to step up and support their wives like I do. So I know that that voice is out there, and I want to get to that voice. I have
yeah,
since learned there's another voice as
yeah.
well, which is everything that you just described. Now, I
Mhm.
will say there is an example, and I had an article written about my channel in USA Today where they interviewed a man that I put them in touch with, who, by his own admission, basically said he was terrible to his wife.
Mm,
And then he started to see my content and he started to take it in and he started to realize,
wow.
really, he started to reflect on really who he had been and who he wants to be. And he got interviewed for the magazine because he realized, okay, I can do something about this. I can change. And that was a pretty, extreme example of where he was at in his relationship. Which is wonderful to see that change. But then there's the other husbands that just go, trade her in, or thanks for the heads up that I need to get out
Oh,
now.
I know. It's just brutal.
And it's just kind of like, okay,
Yeah,
I actually can accept, like, my mission isn't change every husband in the world, right? My mission is to the husbands who want to listen, to the
exactly.
husbands who would care.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what you need to know to show up better for your wife. And
And
if
there are
you,
a lot of them, Jesse.
and
There
there's
are
a
a
lot of them.
lot of them.
Yes. And if you believe, there's Simon Sinek is a guy that I listen to
I
a
like
lot.
Simon Sinek a lot.
Love
Yeah,
Simon.
yeah.
And he said something, I'll mess up the quote, but it was something like, if you talk about what you believe, then you will attract people who believe what you believe.
Exactly.
And to me, I'm going, okay, this is something I believe in. I'm going to talk about it. And to the
Yep.
husbands who would also believe in this, they will show up. And to the ones that don't, I don't know what to tell you. You
And
know,
it's okay because you're speaking to the ones that want to make a difference. But
right.
and what I love about that man who was interviewed or that you put them in touch with is that he took self-responsibility.
Yeah.
And that is probably that's one of my biggest things I talk about all the time. Whether it's my kids, it's like always I'm like, take responsibility for your actions. And whether it's adults, right? He took responsibility for his actions. He loved his wife. He wanted to make it work. And and I'd love to hear what the results are from what he did. So like to me, once you know better, like Dr. Maya Angelou say, when you know better, you do better. You have that
Hmm.
education, you have that vocabulary, like my mother always says, like that, all of those are recipes for success and to be able to help your partner as she's going through this phase of life. And so, yeah, I love that. I think that's amazing. Okay, before we go, I want to ask you, what are some tips, like 3 to 5 tips that you would recommend to men today? So ladies, if please share this video with your partner, with your male partners, if you have a male partner. And Jesse, I want you to give us some words of wisdom. What are some things that you would say to their partners who are listening today that they can help their wives as they go through perimenopause and menopause?
Honestly, I would say it's as easy as one, two, three. Number one, listen to your wife. Number two, believe what she's telling you. And number three, educate yourself about this. It's that simple.
Love it.
There isn't much more to it. Like that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm talking to husbands about doing. And I'm trying to provide the education part. I'm trying to provide part three. What I need you to do is sit down. Don't try to fix. Don't try to educate. Just listen. Let her share with you what she's going through. Let her share with you these symptoms. Let her share with you how difficult this is. And then believe what she's telling you, because there are so many men out there that will say this is an excuse. She's making this up. This isn't real. It's all in her head. You gotta move past that. You've got to sit down, whether you could ever have imagined any of these things or not. Listen, believe, and then educate yourself.
I love that, Jesse. How can people start following you on social media?
So they can find me at husbands, the number 4 menopause, husbands 4 menopause. That's my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and then at the Parent Express on TikTok.
I love it. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being such an advocate for women in perimenopause and menopause. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Jesse as much as I did. If you did, please share it, because the more you share shows you care. And please take a moment to rate and review our podcast so that we can help get this information out to more women in perimenopause and menopause and their partners. Thank you for spending the last little bit with me. I know there's a lot you could be doing, but instead you chose to spend your time with me. And for that, I'm grateful. I'll see you at the next interview.